everybody. It's Christine Garvin, and I am here today with a really, really cool and fabulous lady that I have had the joy of meeting and getting to know as part of Nicole Jardim's apprenticeship program. So her name is Ellie Thomas, and she actually did the apprenticeship a couple years ago, and she did such a wonderful job in that and in her work that she actually oversees our small group calls that we have once a month. That's part of the apprenticeship. And it's been such a really good experience to have that alongside all the other learning that we're doing, because we have a good chance to really sit down and process what we're going through, because we're all growing tremendously and coming up against a lot of different stuff, and we also get to know each other a lot better. And I've been really impressed with Ellie's abilities to handle a group of 6 or 7 of us, and let us each sort of go through our process and tell our stories, but keep us on track and really keep us in a place where we all feel really held and supported. So I know that just from that experience, I'm like, I know she's a great coach, which is actually what she does. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what she does, and I've got some questions for her. So welcome, Ellie.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so glad you're loving the small group calls, because it has been this newfound place of joy and also passion of mine to get such talented and heartfelt women together and to be able to share and open up like you all do in those calls. So it's a complete honor to be able to do that with you. I'm so glad they've been good for you, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, sweet. So one of the things that, has really caught my attention from the work that you do and from your website, it's called Deeply Nourished for Life. And so I'm always very interested in the idea of nourishment, because I think we miss out on that a lot in life. So what exactly does that mean within the context of your work and the work you do with women?
Yeah, it's funny because when I chose that for my website, I was actually really mad about needing to come up with something that seemed so complex that people weren't going to get it. But the more and more I step into my work, being deeply nourished for life actually is what I do with women and what I want to teach them. So it's been cool to watch that evolve with my relationship to that. And nourishment for me really started from a place of physical nourishment, coming from a place of how do I take care of my body? What do I eat? What do I do this? But also knowing that food was connected to social situations, was connected to our environment, was this amazing, I saw food when I was younger as this amazing connector of all of these important pieces in our lives. And it's something that would also bring people together when it was yummy and done well and colorful and beautiful. And so I love the representation that it had. And then over time, as I learned how to do the initial nourishment for my body on a physical level, it even filled that kind of nourishment sense even more grounding, fortifying to the body or to my body, helping me feel ultimately, like somebody asked me yesterday in another interview, like what does true wellness mean to you? And I think it goes hand in hand with this idea of nourishment, where ultimately it was able to secure my physical body in a way that I could step into emotional growth, could step into my dreams a little bit more and show up in a way and not fear them anymore, not have these thoughts of how am I going to be able to do this that I was sharing with you before, or is this even a possibility, or I just don't feel well, so this doesn't even sound like a possibility in my life. And because of that nourishment that started with food, but then as I was able to find the foundation in food over time more and more, and then also like making sure, I'm sure we'll touch into this, of like the body receiving the nourishment and making sure it was using the nutrients that I was getting from my food and needing to do some work around that. I've actually found that it has been this opening of how I can process, go to a next level, like the top of the onion has been taken care of. And so I can go deeper and deeper and then find things that help me become more aligned with my passion and purpose, become more aligned with like the long-term vision of my life, my relationships, and what's actually kind of the real substance of my life that goes beyond even my physical body. So it definitely started from a physical sense, and the sense of nourishment for me has just transformed over time, which I think plays into this idea of being deeply nourished for life, is that we're never really ever going to stop being nourished. We're also not going to stop needing to nourish ourselves. So one is, we can expect the world to just nourish us, but we probably have to take some advocacy in how to nourish ourselves well personally, to be able to get to that place of really feeling nourished. And so that kind of like gives a little bit of backstory, but I really believe that the nourishment never really stops. It just might transform the whys and the hows and the wheres and the whens, or the ways of going about nourishing yourself. And I also believe like it's a staircase, and like it's a staircase that never ends. And maybe the first huge steps at the bottom really are about like food and hormonal health and all these other things. And there are times where we might be up here and we might take a few steps back and need to come back to that to make sure we can move forward again. So we're never just like done with the physical part either, which I think is helpful to know, that it doesn't need to be like the major focus of our life, but we never need to be like, oh, I've been there and done that. We can always kind of check back in with these different places where we're needing nourishment and the types of nourishment we're needing.
Right. So it was Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I think it's so important, like what you said, I was just thinking about, I mean, people know that they need food, right, to survive, but I feel like we don't get it on a lot of levels, that that's the base, right? And that we have to have a relationship with food that allows us to move to these next levels, and to really, I love that you mentioned like go after these other things in life that we want, because yeah, if you're not feeling good, you simply don't even have the energy to do that. But the world gets really small, and it's such an important base step to go back to when you're thrown off, right? So when you have people come to you, is really like looking at their food, is that kind of the first thing that you do with them?
Oh yeah, looking at their food and how their body is receiving that nourishment, I would say. Because like one thing is what we put into ourselves, but then figuring out what our body is doing with it, or understanding how that might work. So understanding what your body is doing with it, but also, making sure that it's not being rejected in some way, or it's not poisonous to you. But if you have an allergy or an intolerance or something like that, or if you have gut issues, aren't able to absorb that nourishment, it really isn't going to end up giving you everything that you're wanting from it. And so I'd say like, yes, definitely things around the relationship with food and kind of restructuring the way we think about how we nourish ourselves is a lot of what I do at the beginning with people. So I usually would say the first minimum of 8 weeks of working together is very, very food focused, in a sense of step-by-step changes that people are going to feel confident with continuing over time. Because we're not trying to just adopt a diet here and for it to be done in 30 days, because it's not going to bring hormonal transformation for more than like a few moments. And it's also not going to help you get to that place of sustained nourishment that we're looking for. So figuring out how to help them make the change in their life in a way that brings them confidence and helps them feel like they can keep going and this can be part of their life. Even those nuggets of feeling like that is like nourishment to your soul, right? Of this deep feeling of what it feels like to take care of yourself, what it feels like to know what you need and to give your body what it's asking for, to be able to kind of decode some of your cravings and figure out like, this isn't, it's also related to because I was feeling this way stress-wise, or because I haven't slept in a few days. And all of a sudden we don't feel so volatile, because we don't feel like, we're just bouncing all over the place. Understanding where the momentum from each of those bounces is coming from takes this load off of the pressure that we have to get to a result place and start to focus. It allows us to start to focus on this nourishment that we're desiring from ourselves. I really believe that every woman that comes to me is desiring nourishment in some way. She might not be realizing that that's specifically something more than food, or that it's just related to food, but she's craving something. She knows that there's something else, there's something more that she could be experiencing that she isn't experiencing today. And that isn't always a conscious thought. So when we like start this process together and we're working together, we take these small steps that are not only going to like fortify the body, like I said, really support gut health, support elimination, support someone feeling that energy and confidence as like in a another form of non-physical nourishment, to be able to want to move forward and to continue to explore, okay, what was this like desire that I was having when I came here? And what am I needing beyond the physical feeling of feeling okay? Which, that's enough at the beginning. But once we actually feel that, it's really cool to watch people want to go beyond that. And so I've over time been able to take someone from a place of going beyond the food, like starting with the food, but going beyond the food. And really that's a mirror of somewhat of my own journey and a lot of what I've invested in for myself as well, to be able to understand, like, when you're not doing something, when you're not implementing something, it's not just because you don't want to implement it. It's because there's usually a why behind it. So like getting curious, observation without judgment, which you've probably heard me say before, like tuning in a little bit more and knowing ourselves on a deeper level, knowing that the physical nourishment and the non-physical will come together the more we can do that together. So yeah, it starts with food, but then it's been so cool to watch this transformation happen within their bodies. We kind of take out the major peaks and valleys and we make it a slow roll that's naturally part of their life. And when there's this slow roll, we've got these big energy gaps that we were using this energy before to control these peaks and valleys. And all of a sudden we can put it towards something else. Right. We can put it towards something else on a physical level, and we can put it towards something else on a mental, emotional level. And that's when it's almost like the beginning is the soil, the really putting the roots down, making sure that your flower, your plant is going to have the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the sun, etc., that it needs to be able to bud. And once we get to a place where that is there, we see those buds. And what I really feel like opens women up and what kind of excites them beyond, feeling better, feeling more regulated when it comes to hormones, having healthier periods and beyond, is the sense of coming into themselves. And that's like the flower more opening and blooming again. So yes, we start from the bottom up for sure, but it really, I find that what I've been able to see with other women has been also what I've seen in my own journey. And the more that we can build that foundation with the first steps and have support around that and gain confidence in it, it only plays into more excitement and possibility in the future, which ultimately every woman needs excitement and possibility for her future. So it's really cool to watch that happen.
I love all of that. So much came into my head as you were talking, but one of the things that really stuck with me is this idea of reconnection, reconnecting to your body, right? Like you were talking about. So many women, I think, don't know the signals, that their body is telling them, because we have been so disconnected from our bodies. And to me, that's kind of what, nourishment is really about, is getting to this place where I can hear my body telling me like what's working and what's not working, and I do, sometimes think that it can be hard in the world of nutrition, where this idea of being very regimented on a particular diet, isn't necessarily A, connecting to your body and what it's telling you, and also B, what is really true is that a lot of women do have disordered eating issues, but really kind of that comes from disconnection to the body too, right?
Right.
So how much do you kind of have to navigate that, I guess? How often do women sort of come in with either disordered body image or disordered eating or any of that kind of stuff?
A lot. I've been discovering recently that the source of most of that, you talk about this disconnection, and more specifically, I've been noticing this disconnection of trust in themselves and trust in their bodies. And that's something that's hammered into us from when we're little, that like neck up, we're good to go. Neck down, we can't control what's going on down there, right? And I get that from people that are coming with PMS, or saying like, my body hates me right now, or I'm constantly battling my body, or I'm sick of fighting my body or fighting myself. And so it comes up a lot. However, and oftentimes if it's going on too much, it's something that I can't see, right? It needs to be looked at with somebody that is an expert and a professional in that space. But little twinges of it are often I don't want to say corrected, but opened up a little bit more when we can focus on experimentation. So instead of following a regimen, what happens when we do this thing called observation without judgment and we just try it together? We just try it and see what happens. And I have to do this at the beginning with people around food journaling and around breakfast. And that's where I always start. Those two things together. We don't go beyond that. People are always surprised that we don't go beyond that. They're like, wait, I've got this big problem and you're telling me to go eat breakfast. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not eating breakfast right now, are you? And they're like, no. So, okay, then it's time. Here's how you build your breakfast and we make it happen. And within a few days, I get text messages like, whoa, I really didn't believe you when you said that this is going to work, but I don't feel this anymore. I don't feel this. But the only reason that they can observe those things happening is because they are also have taken time to tune in with the food journal. And so, and when I say food journal, I'm not talking like you tell me the macros, you tell me the perfect amounts. I'm talking like questions about what day of your cycle is it? What is your hunger level before you eat? What time of day did you eat? And then in general, what did you eat? And then did you have cravings afterwards? What was your energy level afterwards? Was there any bloat? Things like this that as people tune into, usually the response is, sorry, I'm about to lose battery and I want to make sure that I don't get cut off. So I'm going to plug in my thing while we're talking. But people usually come back and tell me, I didn't realize how bad I was feeling or how little I was eating or how much of this I was eating or how my diet is purely sugar or something like that until I wrote this all down. And so when we can use the piece of, I'm just going to reach over for a second. When we can, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. When we can use the piece of, tuning inward and just noticing, and then also thinking about these next steps as like experimentation. I cannot tell you perfectly what's going to work for you. And a lot of people come to somebody that's a nutritionist and say, so don't you just tell me what to eat and I eat it? And I could, but that really wouldn't develop this trust and knowing of your body that ultimately I don't want you to depend on working with me to be well in your life. I want you to refine this connection that you were talking about, refine this trust in yourself that you are able to nourish yourself, refine this trust in yourself that you already know what you need most of the time. You just might not know the details or the context to put it into place. But once I can help you find that, you know what you need. There's a time of about two months into working with someone where there can be some anxiety. Like they've been working on this for 2 months, they've seen changes, but then there's maybe a lull, or maybe like things are starting to shift with their cycle and they're having some up and down mood things, or they get a breakout or something like that. And when they come back to ask me like, what do I do? I'm like, okay, like let's slow down first. And then like, what do you feel like you need? What's out compared to what you were doing a month ago that you felt was really working? What isn't working right now? And they know immediately. So being able to refine, and for some people, this is a lot longer of a process. One woman specifically that I've been working with that has gone through many eating disorder treatments, but she also wanted to work with a more holistic style of nutritionist. And we talk about all sorts of things, but one thing that has changed, it's taken maybe 8 months for her to feel like she can say, I felt really blah, 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 but I know exactly why now. And there's that trust and like, well, if you know exactly why, then we can start putting the pieces in place so that that isn't a constant in your life. And once you can identify those things, whether it be like writing down or just that sometimes they have to happen more than once to you, unfortunately, for it to really be a lesson. But my purpose, my gift here is like guiding you and understanding those pieces that are going to help you not only trust yourself, like this is how the body usually responds to something like this. Let's try it and see if it responds like that for you. And I would say 80% of the time it does. There are certain people that it doesn't, and we need to play around a little bit. But that 80% is a big yes for people of, whoa, I've never seen my body respond so quickly to something. Right. And so when we start to cultivate that connection of we've been watching Then we experiment without expectation of exactly what needs to happen in the next like day or next week. We don't have a goal of, you know, a certain amount of weight or a certain change. Then this also comes into like, I have prefaced them with, this could take a little bit of time. Like not going to say you're not going to feel differences in a week, because you are, but you're also, you know, your entire hormonal imbalance is not going to be undone in a week, sort of thing, or rebalanced in a week. And so when the expectation is like, okay, I have some space to play around with this, and they do see a response internally, it begins to put those seeds of trust back in, where they're able to say, in the long run, I have the tools that I need. And like, ultimately I might go to Ellie because I need a sounding board. Like after many months of working together, you know, maybe we'll do a follow-up call, and I just want to recheck in about these things. But if I guide them in doing that, they have it all within them. It's not this piece that they don't know how to do, that they feel so lost about anymore. And so this whole process of kind of reconnecting also begins to rebuild this trust with, when I'm taking care of myself, my body does respond a certain way, and that feels good. And that is how I would like to interact with my body. When I'm not doing these things, my body also responds. Therefore, I can trust this interaction, right? I can trust the giving and I can trust the taking. I know it's starting to happen. And we start to connect this above the head from below the neck, sort of, or above the neck from below the neck again. And it feels possible to walk more in kind of like oneness, and not in this complete volatility that I talked about earlier, which that volatility does anything but provoke trust. And that's a lot of the time what a regimen, like a diet or something specific like that, creates, is a very short amount of time, very strict, and then we feel like the balls are just bouncing all over after the play or afterwards.
It's, I mean, you know, everything that you're saying is really, I guess, the difference between holistic nutrition and sort of a more traditional dietitian approach, you know. And I was
And I
thinking
do think there are some dietitians that do have this approach too. I think it's
absolutely
partly probably your personal experience and how you got to that.
And yeah, and absolutely sort of, if you're more sort of old school approach versus maybe
Sure.
more, yeah, new paradigm. But I was thinking too, because we both went to Bauman College, and you know, I knew that we were there at different times, but one of the things that they had taught, you know, us while I was there was how to track the macros and all of that, you know, and I did that initially after I was done with that program with clients, and I hated it, right? Like I did not like doing it at all. And there was a couple, I worked with both men and women, and particularly the men, they loved it, right? But I'm just like, I'm not teaching you how to connect to your food or your body, you know, to me, it's like such a waste of time and energy and all those things, you know, and it really is, you know, or can be a longer process to connect to your body and figure out what's working for you over time. But that's literally setting you up for the rest of your life versus you know, stay in that macros and, you know, micros and all that like place of constantly following that, or you're just going to be depressed and it's going to, you know, it's going to be a sad existence. So
yeah, and I think there's a time and place for certain people in their lives where that is what they want and need, and a very specific goal. It's just probably not the end all be all for them, and it's probably a step on their on their staircase, right? So I remember also doing that and knowing I will never do this with a client, because it just, especially when you don't even understand what foods contribute to those macros yet, or what are the healthy things versus the healthy. When we put numbers out there, we're often not looking at like the nourishment that's already in the food and what it can give us in a whole. And it's already kind of starting to break things into pieces and be a little bit more micro focused instead of, and that's interesting because they're called macronutrients, but a little bit more micro focused in our lives about like, I need the specific gram. And I have always, while it's important and interesting, especially when you're getting into therapeutic situations and playing around with different gene compositions, like having clients that do best with good, you know, when it comes to their period and their thyroid health, like they probably a lot of the time need more starchy carbohydrates in their diet than they think that they do, or that they start off with, or that aren't just coming from refined things. But then there are people that are the complete opposite, and we don't want, like, they really need a lower, more controlled situation in terms of like where their carbohydrates are coming from. And so yes, the mentality of we have to be able to shift things for different goals is important to me, but looking much beyond the numbers. And the cool thing that brings me back to food and has brought me back to food since I was 17 continuously has been this connecting piece. And so when we break it just into the numbers, for me, it kind of loses that connecting piece. It's just serving one specific role. Whereas food is this beautiful place where you can nourish your body, you can nourish your hormones, you can like arrange your food in a way that you're taking care of yourself, but you can also share it with others. It also connects you with people outside of yourself. You also get to choose where, you know, depending on what is in your budget, like where you buy something, where you don't, or what it looks like for you. And so that piece actually like brings us into a lot of our life more than just a number does. And ultimately, I think that piece in and of itself, even though it's often not conscious, is very nourishing and reassuring to liking the way that we live or the way that we support our, you know, community, if that's a farmer's market sort of situation, or the way that we're feeding our families, if we have kids or partners. You know, it's this building block for something that feels more profound than just a number.
And we're social beings, and so that's going to come into every part of our life. So you said, you know, ever since you were 17 that this has been a part of you. So what kind of got you on this path in the first place?
Yeah, I've had lots of my own health problems, which probably a lot of people that you interview will say similar things, right? So my health problems started when I was quite young, possibly related to mold in my parents' house, just really low immunity, lots of skin issues, lots of eczema. Eczema is definitely something that I deal with. And then this kind of was on and off, lots of fatigue, just like not a lot of great things going on, and not always feeling like the best that probably a kid could, but it was just kind of normal. And when I got my period the first time, I was actually really excited to get my period. I was interested in periods like secretly. And so it's kind of funny that I do what I do now, but I was so excited to get my period until I got it, and it was ultra painful. And I just remember like, it was the middle of the summer and school was about to start. And I was like, how is this what it's like to get your period? How am I going to go through school? It was so heavy and drained. I just felt drained by it. And I had dealt with these major cramps too. So that was kind of interlaced into my early teens. And when I was 17, my mom was diagnosed with cancer for the second time. And at the time, I didn't really understand that it was like, it was a hormone receptor positive, estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. But in the long run, that has been a big motivator for me to understand my body and hormones a little bit more. But at the time, I kind of came at food from a place of like, you know, if I take care of myself perfectly, I'm not going to get this. Like, this isn't going to happen to me, which is very regimented, like you were saying before. And it's also not how the body works. And cancer does not only depend on what you eat. So does it affect it? Probably, yes. But it's not just dependent on only your food. And so I kind of dove into that for a while in a not healthy way, and then ended up thinking I wanted to study nutrition and being a little bit, I grew up on a farm. So I grew up in like a small, not industrial at all, like not a big farm, a hobby farm where my parents had like a big organic garden and they grazed cows and kind of hippie land in the middle of it all. And so when I got to school and I started studying nutrition, I was like, wait, like we're going so micro-focused and food is connected to all these other things. I already knew that there was some kind of disconnect for me going on. So I decided to change. And years later, I was able to come back to it after I had had a series of being on birth control and also having lots of reactions to that. When I say reactions, like I don't mean like exploding, my skin exploding, but lots of weight gain and weight loss at certain times, just not feeling like myself, feeling absolutely exhausted. And ultimately, the reason that I decided to get off birth control was coming from a place of being sent to the ER while living in Chile a couple times because of big urinary tract infections that were moving into my kidneys. And so after the third one, and they just would come on, like they probably existed before, but I didn't have any symptoms. Then all of a sudden it would be like fever and all of the really dangerous sort of things. And so after 3 of those, and subsequently needing antibiotics, I was like, okay, there's got to be something going on here. And that's when I started becoming a Googler and Googling like the connection, what this could be. And I found things about the connection, the possible connections between birth control and urinary tract infections. I didn't experience yeast infections. And right around when I got married at 24 years old, which was, it was younger than I expected to get married, but it was this very big turning point in my life. And I decided like, and I talked to my husband, I don't want to be on this anymore. This is not something that I don't think is serving me. And I made the decision to come off, and my cycle corrected almost immediately. Things went pretty easily. I didn't have any problems coming off. I'd only been on it for about 2 years. And it seems like not a big deal until about 9 months later. And 9 months later, my life completely changed from being like very low stress to extremely high stress and starting a new job. And my schedule changed, my exercise changed, my eating changed, like everything changed, because even though I was still eating a lot of really healthy foods, mainly vegetarian at the time, and I was kind of in the situation where I like felt horrible, and within days of starting this job, felt like I was addicted to coffee, addicted to chocolate in the afternoons, only wanted to sleep, really couldn't do anything except for go to work, feel completely drained, and come back. I was missing out on everything else I needed to do or wanted to do, and connecting with my husband. It was becoming quite the issue. I was just not feeling well. And soon enough, like 6 or 8 weeks passed at this job and my period didn't come. And so this big movement from like post-birth control and things, things were chill, they were controlled for. But the moment this big interrupter happened in my life, things kind of went haywire. And so I spent the next multiple months trying to figure out what was going on. And ultimately things were only getting worse. It was one of the situations where I was like standing in the bathroom multiple times a month, taking pregnancy tests, knowing I wasn't pregnant, but like, where is my period sort of thing. And when it did come, my husband thought he needed to take me to the ER because the pain was so bad. And I'd just be like screaming and moaning and not able to move or go to work for multiple days. And so I just at one point I was like, this can't be my life. This can't be possible. This isn't something that, kind of what I told you, like my clients come to me for now, like there has to be something beyond this. I don't really believe that just taking birth control is the answer, because I didn't feel good on that either. So how is that the only possibility here? And, doctors were like, you're crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. And so you're totally fine. You look like the vision of health, even though I didn't feel that way. So I ended up searching and finding Nicole's program originally. This is like almost 5 years ago to the date. And I like to say I was on a Google bender once late at night, probably right as my period was supposed to be coming, and it wasn't showing up, because that's when most people contacted me too. And I just on a whim bought this program, and slowly putting the pieces together and through the recommendations of her program, but also like in the Facebook group that she provided, started going to acupuncture, started changing the way I was looking at food, and my eyes were open to these things. I'm like, I am the daughter of someone with a hormone related breast cancer, and I knew none of this. So it was all of a sudden like this power baton was passed to me of like, not necessarily me power over other people, but like the understanding the power I had over myself and over my own health. And my fire was just lit like that. And so it was pretty clear to me that within, 1 year I went into I now have a podcast, and that podcast is literally because 5 years ago, I would listen to 8 podcasts a day on health and nutrition and hormones for an entire year until I couldn't find any more. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I need to go back to school now. So there were multiple pieces that were building up. But the cool thing is that as I was able to put things into place, and also I've needed to work with other practitioners on my own health, because I wasn't able to just get to a place of perfect well-being or greater well-being again just by only changing my food, because it helped at the beginning, but then once it allowed me to also measure like, okay, there's still other things going on, and I need testing around this, or I need testing around that, or I need to be looking into deeper things like my environment and my stressors, and where I'm being stimulated and where I'm not, and my relationships and my emotional health, and all of these things that were playing into this greater kind of I don't know, kind of like, I don't want to say mannequin, but this feeling of just not feeling alive that I was going through, and also dealing with a lot of these issues. So I can happily say that after many, like doing all the layers of the onion and continuing to do them and getting excited about them, I'm in a place where like my period is just like part of my life now. And I feel more alive than ever. But it's also been an incredible journey and a teaching journey. And I've been able to kind of take that and understand those pieces as like, these are possible pieces for other people in their journeys as well.
Well, and I think what you're, in explaining your story, I think mirrors so many other women that have, that are at a certain place maybe at this point, or just in the middle of it all, in the middle of the muck. Is, we have to do our own research. We have to kind of dive into that rabbit hole. We have to try things out. And then we also need to get help too, right? We need to get help from other people. And because you can get stuck really and not really get anywhere if you only are with yourself, right? And so it's amazing once you start diving in and you see how many women are having issues with their hormones, all over the map, from their teenage years to menopause, how little our culture has taught women about our hormonal health or hormones at all.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah. And like that we can't go to our doctors, our regular doctors, and get sort of the answers that we need. And so here we are now, in this place where I feel very lucky to have, followed Nicole and Dr. Sarah Gottfried and all of these other amazing women that are sort of leading the way and helping. And then, at the same time, I still need to work with practitioners that are local to me too, and take that multi-pronged approach. So, on that note, I would love for you to just, tell people about, sort of the process of ways that they can work with you.
Sure.
All of this, and it can help tremendously.
Yeah. So if you're feeling, after listening to this, like called, like, I know there's tons of emotional stuff wrapped up in this for me. And I know that it's more like, I don't really feel like I know how to nourish myself, but I also would like, I'm ready for those aha moments. Like, that's really a good sign that working one-on-one together would probably be your best bet. And there's some people that they're just not at that point in their life. And when I first bought Nicole's program, for example, I was just like, give me the information, let me put it into place, and I will run with it sort of situation. And so I really kind of love to present options and levels for women wherever they're at, to be able to give them those options. So if you're feeling like, yes, I love the dynamic, I love this onion peeling situation, I want to go into it all, and I love the complexity of that, and I want someone that can support me in that, working one-on-one is definitely the place to go. And I take a certain amount of people kind of each season, and it's a minimum of 4 months working together. So we really set up this process of going from everything from getting the food foundations into place, then watching and giving the body space to transform as that's happening. Also making sure that you are finding people that can help you test if something's coming up and I'm saying, this is a red flag here, we probably need to talk to your doctor about this. So having that space in that container of at least 4 months is actually like this major mental release too. So sometimes people are just like, when you're really craving and you just want it to be all okay tomorrow, I get it. But when you can give yourself minimum, like, this is the minimum amount of time it's going to take me to really do that, it will feel so much better. You'll feel like you can follow through without that extra pressure on yourself. So if all that is resonating with you, one-on-one is definitely a good spot. And you can reach out via my website, deeplynourishedforlife.com, and just contact me and I'll get in touch with you. Or you can book a discovery call on my website, doing that too. And then I have a program that's called the Well Woman Reset. And the Well Woman Reset is an 8-week program that guides you in those exact steps that I'm talking about to build those foundations in your life when it comes to food related to your hormones, hormonal balance. And ultimately that all plays into optimal female health, optimal female well-being. I'm always adding things to it. It has everything from recipes to teachings with kind of major focus points each week. So the way I come at it with not only my one-on-one clients, but also in that program, is a very big add-in approach. I'm all about, how do we add in the nourishment that you're not getting right now? How do we figure out, learning about what you need, and then figuring out how to add it into your life before we take any big steps on taking things away. Because I find that, especially when it comes to sugar or gluten or whatever is going on, like, if you're not eating enough good stuff, you'll feel like you're going crazy, basically. And there's a certain time where someone's working with me on one-on-one and I will say, like, look, to get the best thing, we really just have to go move quick, because you're in a place of that you really need a quick turnaround. But if you're feeling like you're not needing that quick turnaround and you just want to build that foundation, going through the Well Woman Reset is an amazing way to do that. You have the information for life and it walks you through it step by step. There's so much good information. I see people that did it a year ago logging back in and revisiting. And that's really what I did when I was doing Nicole's program too. I'd like do a chunk at a time, then go back and revise and add to it, and go back and revise and add to it. So I'd love to be able to provide that for people. It's possible that in this fall, I'll be doing a guided one as a group, or we'll be doing it live, but I'm not sure. So if you have it, you'll hear about that when I make a decision on that. And then if you're just kind of dabbling and you're like, okay, still curious about the connection of like food, or I want to try this experimentation thing, I offer a few free resources that could be really helpful, which are my podcast, Well Women Radio, women with an EN, and our weekly interviews and also solo shows with me, kind of walking you through all things hormonal health and this unpeeling the onion and things that are coming up and how to tune into that. And then also, and different strategies and techniques and success stories from other people. And then also, if you're interested in that breakfast template, so you can start eating breakfast that nobody believes will do them well, I offer, I created a hormone balancing breakfast template, which walks you through what you need, how to include it depending on what's going on hormonally for you. And so you can get that on my website as well, deeplynourished4life.com/free. So you can download that right away. And there's lots of exploration to be done there, and people find it really, really helpful.
Awesome. So I'll be sure to put all of those links in the notes so people
Cool.
can directly there.
Thank you.
Yeah, make it a little easier. So thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today. Like, I knew some of your story, but I was glad to hear more of it, because it really amazes me that all women go through these really intense experiences in their life, right? That are leading them on their path of essentially what they're supposed to do in the world. And I think in this day and age, so many women, it's via their health. We're at this place where we're just hit this kind of tipping point. And so I'm so glad to work with and know women that are really helping other women along their path. And so thank you for the work that you do in the world.
It's such an honor. Thank you. It truly feels like a gift to know at a pretty young age that this is like, maybe just a stepping stone in my bigger journey, but a really, really important one, and something I love and care about so deeply. So thank you for inviting me. It's such an honor. And I would love to connect with people that are watching as they feel called to. So I look forward to connecting.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we're going to head off now for today. Again, this was Ellie Thomas that I was talking with today. So be sure to check out the notes and hit her up on her website for those free goodies and her podcasts, and to work with her one-on-one or within her group. All right. See you guys next time.